"You are fired for poor performance," the chief executive officer yelled. He did not realize I was screen sharing our backend to the board of directors. Then the conference speaker crackled, "Actually, Luke, you are fired." The chairman walked in. "He just saved us. You nearly cost us everything." I knew the company was heading for digital cliff the moment Gavin walked in. He wore a vest that cost more than my first car and smelled like sandalwood and unearned confidence. He did not look at the server racks. He looked at the reflection of his own teeth in the glass partition. To a man like Gavin, infrastructure was not a foundation. It was just plumbing, unsexy, invisible, and annoying when it cost money. I was standing by the cooling units. The low, steady hum of the fans almost drowned out his introductory speech to the marketing team about disruptive synergy. But I could feel the shift in the air pressure. It was not the weather. It was the sudden, palpable drop in the collective intellectual quotient in the executive wing. It felt like being trapped in the calm before a storm I had lived through once before, in the great outage of 2016. The public fallout from that crisis had taught me one lesson: competence is silent, but failure is televised. My name is Luke. For 8 years, I have been the senior backend architect for a software-as-a-service company that handles data sensitive enough to make a frantic lawyer sweat through a wool suit. My job is not to code features that make buttons pop with confetti. My job is to make sure that when 10 million people log in at once, the digital floor does not collapse into a basement of 500 errors. I am the janitor of the internet, the mechanic who tells you that no, you cannot put a jet engine on a Honda Civic just because it looks cool. But Gavin was all jet engine. Gavin's arrival was immediately followed by a wave of corporate jargon that sounded brilliant on a pitch deck, but was poison in a data center. He announced a new push for velocity, an innovation, code words for skipping the tedious, vital steps of compliance and quality control that my team was responsible for. Our primary directive has always been stability, holding the digital wallets of half the Fortune 500. If we break things, we get sued into the Stone Age. The trouble started small, as it always does, not an explosion, but a series of skipped maintenance tickets. Gavin's first executive order was to trim the fat in the engineering department. In his mind, fat meant anyone who was not shipping new features every 48 hours. He looked at my team, the people who handled database sharding, load balancing, and compliance encryption, and saw a dead weight. We were the no department, and he wanted a yes department, Luke. He said to me during our first one-on-one, leaning back in a chair that was ergonomically designed for people who actually do work, "I feel like your team is stuck in 2018. We need velocity. We need to move fast and break things." I held my coffee mug like it was a holy relic, my voice flat. "If we break things, Gavin, our clients lose financial records. We are not a social media startup. We are holding critical infrastructure. If we break things, we get sued into the Stone Age." He blinked. It was the slow, cow-like blink of a man who has heard words but has not processed meaning.
Right. Compliance.
"But let us automate the compliance." "Yes. I am bringing in some consultants, high-energy guys. They worked with me at my last startup. They are going to help you loosen up the pipes." Loosen up the pipes is tech speak for remove the safety valves so the sewage flows faster. The cold knot of professional dread tightened in my stomach. It was the specific, terrible sensation I had not felt since the 2016 outage, the premonition of a pager beeping at 300 anti-meridium on a Sunday. Gavin's arrival was not a disruption. It was an existential threat to the one thing I valued, the integrity of the machine. The fight had begun, and I had been labeled. I was legacy stuff, and I was the enemy of progress. The consultants arrived a week after Gavin's ominous request to loosen up the pipes. They were clones of the chief executive officer, wearing tighter pants and carrying high-end laptops covered in stickers for crypto exchanges that had already gone bankrupt. The air around them smelled faintly of expensive cologne and an almost palpable lack of documentation. They did not ask for the system architecture maps. They did not ask for the database sharding documentation. They only asked for root access. "We have carte blanche," one of them said, smirking. His name was probably Tyler, or something equally forgettable and rhyming with failure. "Gavin can say the moon is made of cheese," I replied, feeling my spine straighten. But until security clears you, you are guests. I cannot give you root access. The friction was immediate and intentional. I knew I had just put a target on myself. I was the relic of a legacy mindset, refusing to yield to the high-energy guys. I walked away, feeling the drilling intensity of their eyes on my back, a silent promise of future retaliation. That night at 2:14 Antimerity, my phone buzzed. It was not a call. It was a frantic automated alert from the primary database cluster. High latency. Packet loss. Something was eating the bandwidth with alarming speed. I logged in from my home office, a quiet room in Brooklyn that smelled of old books and lemon polish, and saw the damage. Someone had deployed a new microservice to production without going through the staging environment. It was a social feature nobody asked for, and it was querying the entire user database every 3 seconds. It was monumentally sloppy, dangerously unoptimized, and attached to the override was Gavin's personal authorization code. He had gone straight around me. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from excitement, but from a cold, pure rage. They were playing with live grenades in a munitions depot. The cascading failure would have wiped out service for the entire East Coast and damaged our reputation beyond repair. I killed the process instantly. I rolled back the update. The system stabilized, the server's digital screaming tapering off into a low, healthy hum. I had saved the system. But I knew the political cost would be steep. The next morning at the daily stand-up, Gavin walked in beaming. "Great work on the new social deployment, guys," he announced, cutting through the general buzz. "We saw a massive spike in activity last night." I cut through the applause. "I had to roll it back, Gavin. It was crashing the load balancers. It was not optimized for production load." The room went silent, a sudden, heavy vacuum. Gavin's smile did not drop, but his eyes went cold, the flat, predatory look of a man who realized the prey had teeth. He paused just long enough for the tension to become unbearable. "Luke," he said, his voice dripping with condescending patience, "you have to stop focusing on the problems. We are celebrating wins here. Maybe if you spent less time rolling things back and more time leaning in, we would be further along." That was the moment. The uneasy calm was over. I was not just an employee with a differing opinion anymore. I was an obstacle to be eliminated. Gavin was the type of man who did not drive around obstacles. He ran them over. But he did not know that I was not a speed bump. I was a spike strip, rooted deep in the system, and I would tear his tires apart. The professional dread was gone, replaced by the grim determination to protect the system I had built, no matter the personal consequences. My past failure, the outage of 2016, was a ghost I had vowed never to face again, and confronting Gavin was the only way to keep the system whole. Following the public shaming over the rolled-back deployment, the freeze-out did not happen all at once. It was a gradual lowering of the temperature, like being locked in a walk-in freezer where the dial is nudged down 1 degree every hour. You do not realize you are hypothermic until you can no longer move your fingers. It started with the calendar invites. For 8 years, I had been a mandatory attendee for the Architecture Review Board. It was the Tuesday morning mass where we confessed our sins and prayed to the gods of uptime. 2 weeks after the rollback incident, I logged in to find my Tuesday morning wide open. I messaged the project manager, a nervous woman named Janet, who survived by blending into the beige wallpaper. "Hey Janet, is the ARB canceled this week?" "Oh, hi Luke." The reply came, the ellipsis pulsing for an agonizingly long time. "No." Gavin restructured the meeting. "It is called the Innovation Sprint now." He said it is for ideation leads only. He did not want to waste your time since you handle the legacy stuff. Legacy stuff. That was the new label. I was no longer the senior backend architect. I was the curator of a museum nobody wanted to visit. I walked past the glass-walled conference room later that morning. Inside, Gavin was standing on the table, literally standing on the mahogany table, drawing erratic circles on a whiteboard. The consultants were nodding furiously. My core team, the senior engineers who actually knew how the code worked, were absent. Instead, the room was filled with junior developers and product managers who thought scalability was just a buzzword you put in a pitch deck. They looked like they were planning a frat party, not a software deployment. Then came the physical displacement. An email from Human Resources dropped, copied to the entire leadership team. "Luke, great news. We are redesigning the floor plan to encourage organic collisions and cross-pollination. We are moving your desk closer to the server room so you can be near the hardware you love so much." The translation was clear. They were moving me to the back corner next to the noisy air conditioning intake and the bathroom, where nobody would see me. I packed my box, my ergonomic chair, my dual monitors, a carefully organized stack of documentation. I moved to the Siberia of the office. It was darker back there, the air stale and cool, but from my new vantage point, I had a direct line of sight to the main network patch panel. It was poetic, really. They pushed me into the shadows, forgetting that the shadows are where you see everything. Gavin stopped making eye contact in the hallway. If we passed, he would suddenly become engrossed in his phone, typing furiously at nothing. The emails kept coming, passive-aggressive masterpieces copied to the entire leadership team. From Gavin to engineering all, subject speed bumps team. I have noticed some drag on our deployment velocity. We seem to be getting hung up on risk assessment protocols that are outdated. We need to trust our talent. I am authorizing a new streamlined approval process. Let us not let the naysayers hold us back. He did not name me, but everyone knew who the naysayer was. He was isolating me, painting me as the bitter old guard who hated progress. He was turning the company culture against competence. I sat in my dark corner and watched the metrics. The new streamlined process meant they were skipping code reviews. Error rates were creeping up. 0.5% increase in failed logins, 1.2% increase in database timeouts. Small numbers to a chief executive officer, but to me, they were cracks in the dam. The isolation gave me something valuable, though time and focus. Since they were not inviting me to meetings, I had 8 hours a day to dig. I started auditing the third-party integrations Gavin's pet consultants were pushing through. One afternoon, I found a bill, a monthly invoice for a cloud optimization tool that cost $40,000 a month. I had never heard of it. I dug it into the vendor details. The company had been formed 3 months ago. The registered address was a post office box in Delaware. The chief executive officer of this vendor, a guy named Chadwick, just happened to be in a lot of Gavin's college fraternity photos on social media. I printed the invoice. I did not run to human resources. Human resources works for the company, and right now the company was Gavin. I folded the paper and put it in my bag. Luke. I looked up. It was Jason, a junior developer barely 22. He looked pale, holding his laptop like it was a ticking bomb. I think I messed up," he whispered, glancing around to see if anyone was watching him talk to the pariah. Gavin told me to push the new payment gateway application program interface. He said we did not need to run the regression tests because it was low risk, but Luke, the transaction logs are looking weird. I motioned for him to pull up a chair. "Show me." He opened his screen. I scanned the raw logs. My blood ran cold. The new gateway was dropping encryption headers on 5% of transactions. This was not just a bug. It was a massive security leak. Credit card numbers were passing through in plain text for split seconds. "Fix it," I said quietly. "Roll it back now," but Gavin said. I do not care what Gavin said. If this leaks, we go to prison. "Do you look good in orange, Jason?" He shook his head, terrified. "Roll it back. I will take the heat." He did. The error log stopped. The system stabilized. 10 minutes later, Gavin stormed out of his office, his face red. He marched straight to my corner, the consultants trailing behind him like hyenas. "Did you authorize a rollback on the payment gateway?" he demanded, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. "Yes," I said, not standing up. I kept typing. "That was a strategic deployment. You are undermining my authority." "That deployment was leaking credit card data, Gavin," I said, turning to face him. "I saved us from a class action lawsuit." He sneered. "You are paranoid. It was a glitch. You are reacting to ghosts because you are scared of the future." He leaned in close, smelling of mints and aggression. "You are on thin ice, Luke. Very thin. Next time you touch my deployments, you will not just be moved to the corner. You will be moved to the street." He spun around and walked away. The office was dead silent. I turned back to my monitor. My hands were not shaking. I opened a terminal window. I made a new hidden directory for logs and changed the permissions. If he wanted a war, he was going to get one. He would not see the soldiers, but my soldiers were lines of code, and they were already marching. The despair of isolation was completely replaced by a cold, calculated resolve. The hunter was ready. The rage from the payment gateway confrontation settled into a cold, steely focus. Gavin had isolated me, painting me as the bitter old guard who hated progress. He was systematically cutting off my technical influence while maintaining the pretense of corporate benevolence. The emails kept coming, framing me as a naysayer, and the looks from my colleagues became more averted. I was a political liability, and they were trying to starve me out. But my corner desk next to the noisy air conditioner gave me freedom. Since I was not invited to innovation sprints, I had 8 hours a day to dig deeper into the system's underbelly. I spent my nights coding a custom dashboard, not the flashy, colorful dashboards Gavin loved, full of vanity metrics and pie charts that meant nothing. Mine was ugly. It was black text on a dark gray background, terminal font raw data. I called it the truth. I aggregated everything. I pulled the source code control logs to show that Gavin's consultants were pushing code with 0 peer reviews. I pulled the cloud billing application program interface to visualize the skyrocketing costs of their supposed optimization tool. I pulled the security audit logs to track every time Gavin authorized a policy override. The centerpiece of my truth dashboard was the uptime lie. Gavin's reports to the board claimed 99.99% uptime. He achieved this by redefining uptime. If the login page loaded, he counted it as up, even if the backend database was on fire and no one could actually execute a transaction. My dashboard pinged the actual services every 10 seconds and calculated the real uptime. The reality was 84.2%. For an enterprise software as a service company, 84% is not just bad, it is a breach of contract. It is death. I had the complete, verifiable evidence of gross professional negligence and outright financial fraud. My surveillance ended on a Tuesday afternoon when Linda from Human Resources, a woman whose entire personality seemed to be based on beige compliance, approached my desk holding a clipboard. "Luke," she said, her voice strained. "Can we have a quick chat?" We walked to a small, windowless room designed for difficult conversations. Linda did not sit down. "We have had some reports," she said, not meeting my eyes, "about your attitude, negativity, resistance to change. Gavin feels like you are not aligning with the new vision." "I saved the database from collapsing last week, Linda." I countered, the irony hitting me with a painful thud. "Keeping the company alive is not aligned with the vision. See that?" She pointed her pen at me. "That tone, it is combative. We are putting you on a performance improvement plan. A PIP. The corporate kiss of death. It is the formal paperwork they need to fire you without the financial cost of wrongful termination. It is a list of impossible goals designed to be failed. This was it, the hit job. What are the goals?" I asked, feeling strangely calm. The calmness was not surrender. It was the focused quiet before launching a complex script. "You need to improve your collaborative score by 50%. You need to fully document the legacy system for the new team. And you need to sign off on the full handover of administrative root access to the consultancy group by Friday." There it was. The kill shot. They wanted the keys to the kingdom, and they wanted me to dig my own grave before they pushed me in. If I signed this, they thought I would be neutered, responsible for the subsequent systemic collapse while having no power to prevent it. "If I sign this," I asked, making sure to hit every syllable with clarity, "does it guarantee my employment?" "It is a step in the right direction," Linda said, giving me that fake, thin-lipped Human Resources smile. "I will sign it," I said. Linda looked genuinely surprised. She expected a fight. She expected tears. I signed the paper. "I will have the documentation ready." I walked back to my desk. They thought they had cornered a rat. They did not realize they had just handed the arsonist a box of matches. Giving the consultants root access was suicide for the system. It would destroy it within a week. But that was the timeline I needed. I sat down and opened my terminal. I updated the truth dashboard. I added a new widget, a countdown to critical failure, based on the consultant's code quality. I estimated the system had about 6 days before a catastrophic, unrecoverable data corruption event. The big board meeting was in 5 days. I had to keep the patient alive just long enough to die on stage. The fear of failure was completely eclipsed by the professional imperative to expose the truth. I was no longer fighting for my job. I was fighting for the fate of the system itself. The moment I signed the performance improvement plan, the countdown clock in my head started ticking in sync with the one on my secret dashboard. But Gavin, emboldened by my apparent surrender and eager to secure the board's approval before any system collapse, decided to speed things up. He did not just want me managed, he wanted me neutered. Wednesday morning, 2 days before the big board presentation, I tried to log into the primary oversight console. The screen flashed access denied. I tried my backup administrative credentials. Access denied. I stared at the blinking cursor. He had revoked my access early, a direct violation of the terms of the plan I had signed less than 24 hours ago. He had discarded the paperwork the moment it served its only purpose, to pressure me into the handover. Hey, a voice cracked behind me. It was Jason again, the junior developer. He looked like he had not slept in 48 hours. His eyes were red-rimmed and he was clutching a zero-sugar energy drink like a lifeline. "Oh, I cannot fix it," he whispered. "Fix what, Jason?" "The replication lag," he choked out, fear making his voice high. "The consultants." "Tyler," he changed the sync settings. "Said we needed real-time analytics for Gavin's demo prep." He turned off the safety buffers. My stomach dropped. Safety buffers exist for a reason. Without them, if a glitch happens in the main database, it instantly corrupts the backup. It is like removing the fuse from a stick of dynamite because you think the fuse looks ugly. "Jason, if the buffers are off," I said, leaning in, "any write error becomes permanent across all clusters. You need to revert it immediately." "I cannot." His voice rose to a panicked squeak. "I do not have the permission level. Only the senior lead does. And your account is locked." I looked over at Gavin's glass office. He was laughing, feet up on the desk, throwing a foam football with Chad the consultant. They were celebrating their total control. They had locked me out to stop me from interfering. In doing so, they had locked themselves inside a burning building with no exit. "Did you tell them about the buffers?" I asked Jason. "I tried," he whispered. "Tyler told me to stop being a nervous Nelly and that latency is a mindset." Latency is a mindset. I almost laughed. It was so absurdly stupid, a corporate mantra that would inevitably lead to ruin. "Okay, Jason, listen to me," I said, my voice low and firm. "Go back to your desk. Document everything you just told me in an email. Send it to yourself, to me, and print a physical copy. Then do nothing. Do not touch the code. If it crashes, let it crash. But the data, it is not your data anymore, Jason. It is Gavin's data. Let him own it." He nodded, terrified, and scurried away. I sat there, powerless. For the first time in 8 years, I could not save the system. I watched my private truth dashboard. The metrics were screaming. The replication lag was climbing exponentially. 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 30 seconds. The system was beginning to dissociate. Users in California were seeing data from 5 minutes ago. Users in New York were overwriting data that had not synced yet. It was a silent data corruption event, the kind that is not noticed until a chief financial officer opens a spreadsheet and realizes $1 million is missing. Then the phone rang. It was not my desk phone. It was my personal cell. "Is this Luke?" a gruff, unfamiliar voice asked. "Yes, speaking. This is Marcus from the board. We are seeing some irregularities in the quarterly report preview Gavin sent over. He says it is a data rendering issue on our end." "Is that true?" My heart stopped. A direct line from a board member. They never called staff. Gavin must be stonewalling them hard. "Mr. Marcus," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I am currently locked out of the system by executive order. I cannot verify any data rendering issues." Silence on the line. "Locked out. You are the oversight lead." "Not anymore." "Apparently. I was placed on a performance plan and my credentials were revoked this morning." "I see." The voice was cold, hard granite. "And if you could see the data, what would you expect to see?" I took a breath. This was it. I could lie, be a good soldier, and maybe keep my severance. Or I could light the fuse. I would expect to see a replication lag of over 45 seconds, leading to severe data corruption in the financial tables. I would also expect to see that the rendering issue is actually the database choking on unauthorized third-party scrapers. Another silence. Longer this time. "Be at the office tomorrow. Luke for the all-hands meeting." "Oh, was not invited, sir." "You are now." The line went dead. I put the phone down. My hands were shaking just a little, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I looked at my screen. The despair I felt when I was locked out was gone, replaced by the grim clarity of purpose. I had one access point left. They had forgotten about the town hall broadcast system. I still had the master key for the audio-visual setup. I was going to give Gavin the show he wanted. I was committing to the public exposure, choosing professional integrity over personal safety. The night before the all-hands meeting, I did not sleep. I sat in my apartment, the glow of my monitors illuminating the room like a cockpit. I was running simulations. If I executed this plan, there was no going back. This was not just whistleblowing. This was a corporate coup d'état stage with code. I checked the script one last time. It was elegant in its simplicity. Gavin's presentation ran on a web-based slide deck platform. The company used a localized caching server to ensure smooth playback during the live stream. My script, which I had embedded in the audio-visual systems maintenance cron jobs years ago, a habit of over-engineering that finally paid off, would detect when the slide deck triggered the quarterly financial page. Instead of loading slide 14 revenue growth JPEG, it would force the projector and the live stream to pull a real-time feed from my truth dashboard. It was a digital sleight of hand. I arrived at the office at 8:00 anti-meridium. The atmosphere was electric, but in the wrong way. The heavy, humid air before a tornado touches down. The innovation consultants were high-fiving, wearing matching branded hoodies that said disrupt. My team, the legacy engineers, looked like they were attending a funeral. The grim reality of the lockup was clear on their faces. Gavin had ordered a catered breakfast. Bagels, lox, the works. It felt like the Last Supper vibe. He stood near the coffee station holding court. "Big day, everyone," he announced, his voice booming. "Today, we turn the page. We shed the dead weight and blast off." He looked directly at me when he said dead weight. I poured myself a black coffee. I did not take a bagel. I went to my dark corner desk, which was ironically the safest place in the building. I opened the audio-visual control panel on my hidden terminal window. Status online. Trigger armed. I felt hyper-focused. The fear of public exposure I carried since the great outage entirely subsumed by the technical execution of the plan. I was no longer an emotional participant. I was an instrument of truth. At 9:50 anti-meridium, the entire company gathered in the main atrium. The remote employees, hundreds of them, were logged into the stream. The board of directors was dialed in on the massive main screen, their faces looming like judges in a science fiction tribunal. I saw Marcus, the board member who had called me. He was not looking at the camera. He was looking down at his notes, a sign he was already suspicious. Gavin took the stage. He wore a headset microphone and looked like a public speaker on steroids. "Welcome, team. Welcome, board." Gavin started pacing the stage. "When I joined 6 months ago, I promised you a revolution. I promised to trim the fat, to modernize, clear out the cobwebs of the past." He clicked the clicker. The screen behind him flashed a picture of a rocket ship. "And we have done it," he boomed. Despite the resistance, he paused for dramatic effect. "Despite the sabotage from those who fear change, we have achieved record efficiency." He was monologuing, loving the echo of his own voice in the atrium. I sat in the back row of chairs, my laptop open on my knees. I looked harmless, just taking notes. Every eye was on Gavin. He was savoring the moment, believing he had won the war through intimidation and paperwork. "But before we get to the numbers," Gavin said, his voice dropping to a somber, serious tone, "we need to address accountability. We have had some technical issues recently. Outages, slowdowns, and we have identified the root cause." He clicked the next slide. It was an organizational chart. My name, Luke, was circled in red. "The legacy oversight team," Gavin said, pointing at the screen. "Refusal to adapt. Stubborn adherence to outdated protocols. Today, I am announcing a restructuring effective immediately. The oversight department is being dissolved and replaced by our strategic partners at Cloud Ops." Gasps rippled through the room. He was firing the entire department live on stage. My heart hammered, but my hand was steady on the keyboard. This was the moment. The political attack had fully crystallized. And now, Gavin smiled, the shark sensing blood in the water. "Let us look at the results of our new strategy. The numbers do not lie." He raised the clicker. "I present you the Q3 metrics." He clicked. I hit enter. The years of isolation and gathering evidence were about to pay off in one single keystroke, reversing the narrative of his attack. Gavin expected to see a glossy bar graph showing a 20% reduction in server costs and a 99.9% uptime metric. That is not what appeared on the 20-foot screen behind him. I had just pressed enter on my keyboard, swapping the presentation feed. Instead, the screen turned a stark, terminal black. Rows of neon green and blood red text began to scroll rapidly. System status critical. Database integrity 64% corrupted. Unauthorized data export detected. Internet Protocol 45.33.22.11. Source Cayman Islands. Real-time uptime 81.4%. The room went silent. Not the polite silence of a presentation, but the vacuum silence of a car crash. Gavin spun around. He froze, his face cycling through confusion and terror. He clicked the clicker frantically. Nothing happened. The data kept scrolling, relentless and true. Alert: billing gateway encryption disabled by user Gavin admin. Alert: 14,000 failed transactions in last hour. Alert: shadow invoice detected. Vendor cloud opt, $40,000 per month, 0 deliverables. What? What is this? Gavin stammered. His confident baritone cracked into a falsetto. Cut the feed! Cut the screen! He waved frantically at the audio-visual booth. The audio-visual technician, a kid named Mike whom I had once helped fix a corrupted hard drive, looked from the terrifying screen to me in the back row. I gave him a tiny, imperceptible nod. Mike took his hands off the console. He did nothing. This is a hack! Gavin screamed, turning back to the audience, sweat instantly beading on his forehead. We are being hacked. This is the sabotage I warned you about. Luke. He pointed a shaking finger directly at me in the back row. He is doing this! He is attacking the company! I stood up. I did not shout. I did not need to. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the projector fan. I am not attacking the company, Gavin, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the stillness. I am showing you the backend. That is the live production server. That is the reality you have been hiding. On the screen, the digitized faces of the board of directors were watching. Marcus, the chairman, leaned into his camera. Gavin! His voice boomed from the speakers, distorted but commanding. Is that accurate? Are we seeing the live logs? No, it is fabricated! It is a simulation he built to discredit me! Gavin yelled, panic setting in. He looked at Chad and the consultants. They were already backing away towards the exit, looking down at their phones. I tapped a key on my laptop. The screen changed again. It showed the chat logs. Gavin's private instant messages with Chad. Gavin, just override the safety checks. We need the speed for the demo. If it breaks, we blame Luke. Chad, what about the data loss? Gavin, who cares? We will have cashed out the stock options by then. The collective gasp from the employees was audible this time. It was a wave of shock and betrayal. Gavin looked at the screen, then at the board, then at me. He looked like a man who had just realized the parachute he packed was full of silverware. That is out of context, he whispered, desperately trying to cling to his shattered narrative. It looks pretty clear from here. Marcus said from the screen, Mr. Chief Executive Officer, please step away from the podium. You cannot do this. Gavin snapped, trying to regain his composure. I am the Chief Executive Officer. I turned this company around. This is a mutiny. Actually, I said, walking slowly down the aisle toward the stage. It is a bug report, and I am closing the ticket. I reached the front. I looked Gavin in the eye. He smelled of pure fear now. The sandalwood was completely gone. You wanted to move fast and break things, Gavin, I said quietly, addressing the core conflict one last time. You broke it. Then I delivered the final, painful blow. You are fired for poor performance, I announced, using his own earlier words against him, before adding, no, get out of my way so I can fix it. I plugged my laptop directly into the podium's hardline. The screen flickered. Initiating emergency rollback, restoring backup from cold storage. Luke secure. The red text turned yellow. Then slowly, line by line, it started turning green. The room was frozen, suspended in that surreal space between catastrophe and salvation. The only sound was the clicking of my keyboard as I executed the restore scripts I had prepped days ago. Gavin stood paralyzed, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. He looked at the screen where the board members were watching. This is illegal, he shouted at the digitized faces. She hacked my private communications! This is corporate espionage! I demand he be arrested. Suddenly, the audio from the board's video call cut out. The double doors at the back of the atrium burst open. It was not security coming for me. It was Marcus, the chairman of the board, in the flesh. He was flanked by 2 other board members and a team of people in sharp gray suits who radiated external council energy. They must have been in the building the whole time. The room parted like the Red Sea as Marcus walked toward the stage. He did not look at Gavin. He looked at the screen behind us, watching the green text propagate. System integrity restoring. 90%. He finally turned to Gavin. "Gavin," Marcus said, his voice deceptively calm. "You are fired. You have to vote on that." Gavin stammered, his face pale. "The bylaws say." "We voted 10 minutes ago," Marcus interrupted, "while you were showing us the rocket ship slide. We were also watching the live feed Luke provided us with yesterday."
He was feeding them data.
Gavin whipped his head around to look at me. "I am the oversight lead, Gavin," I said, not looking up from my screen. "I oversee. This is for cause." Marcus continued, gesturing to the lawyers. "Gross negligence, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. Security will escort you out. Leave your laptop and phone." 2 large security guards stepped out of the shadows. As they dragged Gavin away, he was practically kicking and screaming about his vested options. Marcus stood next to me, his hand heavy and warm on my shoulder. Luke," Marcus said, correcting himself quickly. "Sir," I replied, typing the final command to lock the database. As it stabilized, replication lag is down to 0. Data integrity is verifying now. Lost about 3 hours of transactions from this morning, but I can reconstruct them from the raw logs I mirrored. I had achieved catharsis and vindication, but the job of saving the system was not quite over. The room had erupted in a roar of applause after Marcus told the employees to take a break and let me work. The applause was not polite. It was the collective sound of engineers, support staff, and everyone who had been bullied for 6 months finally seeing justice. I did not wave or bow. I just felt a massive physical weight dissolve from my chest. "Don't thank me," Marcus murmured, low enough so only I could hear. "You just saved my retirement fund. Now fix this mess on it." The next morning, the office felt completely different. The disrupt. Posters were gone, taken down by the cleaning crew overnight. The espresso machine was working again. I fixed it myself before I even sat down at my desk. My old desk in the main pod was back. My ergonomic chair, my dual monitors. Everything had been moved out of the dark corner and reinstated in its rightful central place. But someone had added something, a small vase of flowers and a sticky note attached to the firewall. It read, "Thank you, the team." I sat down and took a sip of coffee. Black, it tasted like victory. The company wiki had already been updated. The innovation sprint page was deleted. A new section titled Systems Transparency was up, and my name was listed as Chief Technical Officer Interim. I was not sure I wanted the title. Management meant meetings, and I hated meetings. But I realized that if I did not take the wheel, another Gavin might come along. Sometimes to keep the peace, you have to run the war room. I was embracing my role as the necessary guardian, a far cry from the avoidant architect I had been. Around 10:00 Antimerity, Marcus walked by. He did not make a big show of it. He just leaned against my cubicle wall. "Gavin is being sued," he said casually, "and the consultants are facing fraud charges. Turns out that cloud optimization company was funneling money into a crypto wallet they all shared." "I figured," I said, not looking away from my code. The invoice looked like it was made in Microsoft Word 97. Marcus chuckled. "We are going to need to rebuild the team. Hire whoever you want. Budget is open." "I want my old team back," I stated. "And I want raises for the junior developers who stuck it out. Especially Jason. He tried to stop them." "Done," Marcus said. He pushed off the wall to leave, then paused. "You know, Luke, most people would have just quit. Why did you stay?" I stopped typing. I looked at the server room glass, watching the lights blink in that steady, hypnotic rhythm. Blue, green, blue, the heartbeat of the machine. "I built this system, Marcus," I said softly. "It is my code. You do not let arsonists burn down your house just because the landlord is an idiot." Marcus nodded. A look of genuine respect crossed his face. "Well, the house is yours now. Keep the lights on always." He walked away. I put my headphones on. I opened a terminal window. Uptime system uptime 24 hours, 12 minutes, 04 seconds. Perfect. I cracked my knuckles, took another sip of coffee, and got back to work. The chaos was over. The silence was back, and for the first time in a long time, it was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of a machine running exactly the way it was supposed to. My journey of professional avoidance was over, replaced by a quiet, grounded confidence in my ability to defend the truth.